Hi, I'm Dr. Walt Jernigan, and I'm your professor for PS213 Child Psychology. I've taught psychology at the New Mexico Junior College for the past 10 years. Before that, I practiced psychology at Lee Regional Hospital and Guidance Center for a total of 20 years. This included much experience working with children and adolescents in both inpatient and outpatient settings, as well as testifying in district court on behalf of Child Protective Services when a youth needed treatment or maybe shouldn't return home immediately. In this course, we will survey child development. I'm making these video lectures because it'll preview some of the main points of each chapter. I strongly recommend that you begin each week by viewing this video lecture because it'll give you a framework on the most important ideas. Next, you should read the chapter, outline it, make notes, highlight it, as you would in a face-to-face class. I think that this strategy is going to be very useful for your weekly activities, including chapter assignments and discussions. And it's going to be absolutely essential when it comes time to take the examinations. Well, let's begin. Chapter 1 is titled The Science of Child Development, and it consists of 4 modules: Setting the Stage, Foundational Theories, Themes in Child Research, and Doing Child Research. Module 1, Setting the Stage. What does setting the stage mean? It means that before science, there was philosophy. And there's basically 2 philosophical approaches to understanding childhood development that can be traced back to Aristotle and Plato. Aristotle said that experience is very important in shaping the child, and that you should think, plan, and educate what your child is exposed to. In other words, good parenting results in a good child. On the other hand, Plato said that the baby comes into the world with much innate knowledge and a sense of how the world works. This school says that childhood development unfolds more or less naturally, and you should not try to shape or mold the infant into an image you have, but rather let nature take its course. In this view, children become what they're going to become, and the experiences they have, both good and bad, are less important. These contrasting philosophical viewpoints are an excellent place to start. But with the rise of modern science in the past couple hundred years, we now have tools and methods to study child development and truly start to answer these questions. Our efforts have really exploded since World War II, beginning with my generation, I'm proud to say, the baby boomers. We have set the stage with a mention of philosophy. Now let's examine foundational theories. When a child turns out well, is this because of good parenting and teaching, or was it the child's destiny to end up that way? Today, we've developed theories to describe and explain children's behavior with the goals of predicting behavior and ultimately helping children along. So let's look at 5 foundational theories of child development. These are the basics from which more modern theories spring forth. The first is biological. Charles Darwin should come to mind in his view that behaviors are innate because they were adaptive and, having survival value over thousands of generations, have now become hardwired into the brain. Another biological view is critical periods, where there is a biological window for learning but without opportunity, that window closes. Experience matters, but biology is still the foundation. A second theory is psychodynamic. Sigmund Freud pioneered this approach, and he made the case that it is not so much biology, but how a child masters conflicts that shapes development. You were probably introduced to Freud's major ideas, including the id, ego, and superego, as well as the conscious and unconscious mind in your Introduction to Psychology course. At least if you took the course with me, you did. Freud's ideas are controversial, and he's heavily criticized. But his enduring achievements are the importance of early childhood experiences in shaping development, and the idea that children experience conflict. Erik Erikson is another famous psychodynamic theorist. While he agreed with Freud about the importance of early childhood experiences in conflict, he emphasized instead psychological and social aspects rather than sexual and aggressive themes that Freud is known for. A third theory is learning. In contrast to a biological approach, learning theory is purely about experience and the environment. B.F. Skinner is famous for discussing how reinforcement and punishment shape the child and his behavior. Albert Bandura from Canada is another learning theorist who pointed out how children can sometimes learn without reinforcement and punishment by watching people around them. This is known as imitation or observational learning. The model has to be popular, smart, or talented, and the child has to see that the behavior is rewarded. A good parent figure would be a candidate for this. A fourth theory is cognitive developmental. Jean Piaget, a Swiss psychiatrist, was concerned with how children think and how their thinking develops over childhood. He was not so much involved with personality. Piaget theorized that children themselves develop theories about how the world works around them based on concrete experiences, but that there are predictable stages where the theory they develop is flawed, and they have to come up with new theories. Speaking of theories, our fifth and final foundational theory is called contextual perspective. This view believes that environment and experiences are very important, but it expands to a much larger system, including parents, siblings, family, teachers, friends, church, community, and actually the entire culture. Vygotsky, a Russian psychologist, is the leading theorist here, and he wrote how child development is essentially an apprenticeship, where the child works with skilled adults to learn what is most important in any given culture, ranging from a college education, building a home, or even gathering food to survive. So there you have it. Those are the basic, broad, foundational theories of child development that will serve as a basis to understanding modern contemporary theories as we go through the course. No single perspective has the complete truth, but they all have a piece of the truth. And I will encourage you throughout this course to consider child development using multiple perspectives all at once, because that's how a professional like me and my colleagues do it. And our author, Cale, of the book, has a great analogy about how to appreciate a beautiful painting. How do you do that? You have to look at it from different perspectives in order to really get it. That's what we're going to do in this course. Let's move on to the third module, Themes in Child Research. One common theme is known as the continuity-discontinuity issue. Do children make gradual, consistent changes towards adulthood, such as an acorn becoming a mighty oak tree? Or does development start and stop in distinct stages, like a caterpillar turning into a cocoon and eventually becoming a butterfly? A second common theme is that development is jointly influenced by heredity and environment. This is the issue of nature versus nurture. For most of history, and going back thousands of years to philosophy, the question was, is heredity or environment the cause? In the early days of science, the question more or less became, how much of both? But today, we acknowledge it is 100% of both. Heredity and environment both need each other. You can't have one without the other. Another theme is how children influence their own development. The child influences their environment with their own unique characteristics and personality. A great example is that a child who is happy and excited about reading makes it easier for parents to want to read to the child as opposed to a fussy and squirming child who's going to make it a lot harder. That child may even suffer intellectually and socially as a result of not having as much reading time. And a fourth theme is that development in domains is connected. We will study different domains and break them down into physical, social, emotional, and intellectual. It's easy to think that these domains are independent, but make no mistake about it, they are intertwined and they even influence one another. Well, we're ready for the final module in our chapter, and this is doing child research. The scientific method involves deciding on a question to be studied or investigated, maybe even answer it. We state a hypothesis, which is in the form of an if-then statement. If such and such is true, then it follows that something else should be true. Let's test it. Then the real fun begins. We gather data, and it turns out there's many methods and ways to gather data. We could start with systematic observation, where we observe children in their natural setting. Or we may have to bring them into the laboratory to study behavior that may not occur naturally very often. We could also do sampling behavior with tasks where we present the child a specific task and measure how they respond. Still another choice is self-report, which is kind of like sampling behavior, except that we talk to the child about a situation and ask him or her what they would do and have them answer either verbally or in writing if they're old enough. Finally, a measure which is not common but can be powerful is measuring a child's physiological responses. For example, we measure their heart rate, or stress hormones, or their brain state while they engage in a particular activity. A good research program in a major university or institute worldwide is going to use many different ways to gather behavior. Now, why would they do that? It's because if you use different methods and come up with similar results, you're much more confident in those results. One popular design for research is the correlational method. In the correlational method, we look for a relationship between two variables. For example, suppose we want to investigate, do smarter children have more friends? We would obtain measures of these two variables on each child, their intelligence and how many friends they have. We can then obtain a correlational coefficient, which ranges from negative 1.0 all the way up to positive 1.0. The further the number from zero in either direction, positive or negative, the more powerful the correlation is. But remember, correlation tells us nothing about cause and effect. One of the most famous statements to learn in all of psychology is correlation does not imply causation. Let's say we did get a powerful correlation of positive 0.75 to where children with the highest levels of intelligence have the most friends. That's a significant relationship. There are three possibilities here, but we cannot conclude any of them. One, it may be that somehow being intelligent causes you to get more friends. Two, it could be that having a lot of friends causes you to be more intelligent. Or a third, and I think this is probably what's going on, but we have no way to prove it, is that parents who are warm and supportive raise children who are both socially popular and achieve at a high intellectual level. The strength of the correlational method is that we see relationships, but we cannot make a cause and effect statement, as tempting as that may be. The other popular research method is the experiment. We do an experimental study to try to make a cause and effect statement. Suppose we want to investigate, are children more likely to share a toy with a friend or a stranger? We would bring children into the lab. Half of them would be randomly assigned to a condition where they play with a friend, and the other half randomly assigned to play with a child they have never met. Whether they play with a friend or a stranger is the independent variable. It's independent because the experimenter manipulates it. Afterwards, we measure how much time they spent sharing a toy, if they spent any time at all, with their friend or with the new child. This is the dependent variable, and it's measured at the end. If we find that children are more likely to share a toy with a friend, we can say the presence of a friend caused them to share that toy.